Okay, just a background to me, I help out with Isabel and Sandy, who I think you've probably all met, because they think I'm a bit techie and understand things like websites and InDesign programs and Illustrator. Like you, I'm just an aging intern rather than a young intern like you guys. I just help out where I can. I do quite a lot of training on InDesign and Illustrator sometimes, and website work, because apparently I know something about it. I got interested in publishing, A, because I'm Isabel's husband, and B, I wanted Ringwood to publish my book. Some of you may have seen it. Sorry, that's all backwards, isn't it? But that's the book I wrote. I'm not a social worker, unlike Sandy and Isabel. I'm a geologist by training, used to work in the oil industry. And I wrote a book on Isla, the geology of Isla, the island of Isla. And Ringwood have published it. Does quite well. And it's quite a complicated book because it's not just a standard paperback. It's got like maps and pictures and contents pages and indexes and glossaries and all sorts of non-fiction techie stuff in it. So that's how I got involved, and I learned my InDesign and Illustrator through doing that book, and I applied that to Sandy's original books, which had been just done relatively unprofessionally by producing a Word document, running it into a PDF and sending it to the printer, which is fine, but not very professional. And so having learned InDesign, I convinced Sandy, not difficult, that he should get an InDesign license, and we should produce all the subsequent books and retrospectively do some of the other older books in InDesign. And InDesign is brilliant for producing ebooks, EPUBs, because you can set and one of the things we're going to talk tonight about is a little bit how you set up the book so that it can make a good EPUB. But traditionally, most of the books we do are standard sort of paperback novels without much extra graphic material, like the one that's just been relatively recently published. Other books we've done, like this one, have got some sort of graphics in them, black and white pictures sort of dotted throughout the text. Yeah. So we've got a sort of combination of mixture of sort of books that we publish, which are everything from a standard paperback with no graphics to ones with a bit of graphics to something that's quite complex. We've done, one of the better sellers we've done is this one called Millennial Monroes, that has a bunch of sort of maps. You probably can't see that very well, but it has maps and things interspersed in the text. That's one of the ones. So what we're trying to do here is learn a bit about InDesign, teach you guys that want to learn it. So this is an introduction to it. You may, after an hour, a bit of me wittering on about InDesign, think that's not for me. I don't want anything to do with it. Thank you very much. I'd rather do something else. But this is a skill you could pick up from us. Use it in a project that either George, Sandy, or Isabel, whoever's in charge, I never know who's in charge, allocates to you guys. So you'll probably get a project to do, which may be one of these new books that we're doing. And that means turning the author's scribbles and documents, which have got a variability in terms of their quality, in terms of their layouts, into a standard format using InDesign. And quite a lot of the interns that we've trained, or I've trained in this, have then taken that book with them as a sort of a part of their portfolio, and says, at an interview, I made that book. And quite a few interns have gone on to have proper jobs, unlike Ringwood sort of internship, where you just learn a skill, you apply it, we get the benefit, you get the benefit of learning, and you can take it into the big wide bad world and hopefully get gainful employment in it. So yeah, people have done that, and they've used the skills they picked up. And I said, to turn up at an interview with a book saying, I made that book, or I made this EPUB, is quite a good. If that's the skill you want, this is the experience for you. Yeah. Okay. Right. What I'm going to do, does that sort of sound okay? Yeah, that's just what. Okay, if you find it's not for you, just dip out. I won't be embarrassed. I won't be offended. Just this appeals to people like me. Isabel wouldn't go near InDesign with the barge pole. She just thinks she's much more strategic and interested in the whole concept of the books. This is detaily stuff. This is nitty gritty about fonts and sizes and shapes and font and all sorts of detail. So this is the sort of thing that some people don't like, but has to be done. Right, what I'm going to try and do is share my screen in a second. So I'm going to just minimize. No, what I want to do is move this over here. What we're going to do is use InDesign, obviously. Now, when you come to do it, the best thing you can do is download it from the Adobe website, and you get 30 days to play around with it. So you don't need yet necessarily to have the Ringwood. We have a single user, well, they can use it on 2 or 3 computers at the same time. We have a license for InDesign. And you will, if you go past the 30 days and you're going to do a proper book for more than 30 days, then we'll give you the password and the username. But you can have 30 days to play around with it, and quite a lot of people, that's all they need. They can produce a book, and that's all they want to do, or they have a good play with it and decide that's for them or not for them. So Adobe make InDesign. They're the people that make Adobe Reader, that make a whole host of things like Photoshop and stuff like that. You're probably all aware of that. Right, let me I'm going to share my screen. This is, and I'm going to have to probably put that one over there. Right, can you see my desktop? Can people see my desktop? Okay, so InDesign, I've got it as a icon here. So I'm just going to load it up. It should load up. This is the 2020 version. I've only just started using it. I was using the 2017 version for a long time. I just thought this was just a tweak, but it actually is quite a new change, update to the program. So apologies if I get a bit lost in it, because it has changed the interface a little bit. I don't know why it's so annoying when they do that, when you get used to a program and then it changes. Right, my screen is over on my left-hand side. I'm going to be looking that way. Yeah, you guys are on that screen underneath my camera. Okay, I'm just going to put this onto full screen. Okay. Right, so this is the layout of InDesign. It's fairly straightforward, sort of Windows type program. We've got this sort of window bar at the top here, some drop down boxes, some control here, some tools down the left hand side, and some windows that do stuff on the right hand side, and a sort of big area in the middle to play around with the document. So some of you, maybe did you get a copy of this little piece of paper I sent? I'm going to try and run through that as a sort of, and you can scribble on it. If you've got a print of it, it's brilliant. You can just scribble on it. Yeah. So I'll look at some of the notes I've scribbled here. It's not very comprehensive. It's not a full, I haven't written a full training manual here. It's just some notes that you can refer to in conjunction with this. What we try and do with a book is we produce 4 documents. Now, it's not necessarily, you don't have to have 4 documents, but it makes sense that you have at least these 4 documents. And you create these as separate documents in InDesign, and then you create a book, an InDesign book file when you've done all the documents, which creates the book. So it's a bit confusing, because if you go to File, New, it gives you a choice of document, book, or library. I've never used library, don't know what it does. Like much of InDesign, there's only bits of it you ever use. So the separate sections of the book are documents, and they have a file suffix called INDD, yeah, which is an InDesign document, and the book file, which is underneath here, file new, where has it gone? Yeah, the book thing you can see there is INDB, which ties all the documents together. So many books have got 4 documents, and you create them separately, which is, one's got all the front matter. That's a sort of technical term we use for all the gubbins at the front. That is all the stuff that is in the front of a book before you actually get to chapter 1. Yeah. So this is this will be dedications, title pages, copyright pages, quotes, prologues, maybe, all sorts of bits and pieces at the front of a book called the front matter. The main text is the meat of the book, obviously. The back matter has things like appendices, acknowledgements, biographies about the author, all sorts of other bits and pieces at the very end. And then at the end of the book, the printed book, certainly, we usually stick in a sort of wee catalogue of books that Ringwood have done that maybe that the reader of this book might be interested in. We don't put all 30 or 40 books in it. We put a selection of books at the end as a sort of little catalogue just to sort of tempt a reader into sort of, if you like this book, you might like these type of things. Yeah. So there's 4 separate documents. The geology book was quite complicated, and each chapter in the geology book was a separate document. So this book has got about 25 documents in it. It just makes them easier to edit if you've got lots of bits of so if you're doing a non-fiction book with lots of bits, like Charlie's Monroe book, I think I certainly put each chapter of that as a separate document. It doesn't matter, you can have as many as you like, but I would always suggest you have at least these. Yeah. So what we're going to do is set up a new document. So this is not really a training session. This is just getting you familiar with it, because it's not really a hands-on thing. You're not doing it together. I'm just showing you the stuff, yeah? And you can watch the recording and you will then try it yourself. So it's a bit of a sort of, it's more like a seminar, I guess, rather than a training course. But now, I mentioned here that that we use a standard sizes of a book. Yeah. Now, all these paperback books, non-fiction, so all these fiction paperbacks are always 128 by 198 millimeters. Don't ask me why. It just seems to be a standard. We then, for our non-fiction books, they're slightly bigger. These are A5, which is 210 by 297 millimeters. So these are A5, which is half A4. Yeah, don't ask me why we did that, but we did, and it's fairly standard. That's a sort of standard thing. So when you see these books on a bookshelf, the non-fiction books are just slightly bigger. Yeah. So 128 by 198 is what I've written on here on the document here. Yeah. And you've got this sort of box on the right-hand side that tells you whether you want it. Obviously, most books you're going to be portrait, not landscape. I've said here, tick facing pages and primary text frame. It'll make sense when I come on to that, but tick them anyway. You don't need to then guess the number of pages, yeah, is what I'm trying to say here. The program will automatically generate the right number of pages for you when you put in the text. And it's facing pages, which means it's going to come up with pairs of pages, lefts and rights. Yeah, it's important that you get that in, so you need to have that. We're going to keep one column, and as you scroll down here, you'll see what's a very important, and the last person that did the last book we were doing forgot to put this in and got it wrong. This is actually the most important bit. One of the most important bits here is that that you get this right, because if you look at any paperback, well, if you open the pages like this, if your text is too close to the spine, we call the gutter, the writing goes into the gutter. So if you don't make that big enough, you'll find that people have to break the book to actually get to the words, and you don't want to do that. So we have an inside margin that's bigger than the top margin, and a bottom margin has to be slightly a bit bigger to accommodate page number. Yeah, we tend to have, our style tends to have the page number center bottom. Now, obviously, you could put it anywhere you like, but we're trying with Ringwood to try and get some sort of consistency. We don't want every book to look completely different. Yeah, so we have a standard sort of font, a standard sort of layout, and a standard sort of size. One of the last guys that did the last book, which I had to then correct, just left it at 15, 15, 15, 15, which is a standard InDesign default, which meant that the gutter was too tight and the page number was crammed up against the bottom of the text, which just didn't look right. The author looked at it and said, "What's wrong?" And I looked at it again and said, "He didn't put 2020 in," and I had to redo it and put it into a new document to get the 2020 right. So this 15, 20, 20, 15 is quite an important thing to remember to do. Okay, that allows you to then press create. If you've got that, I'll come on to slug and bleed later, but basically, if you've got the page size right and the margins right, and these ticks on, which I think are defaults anyway, but you may not be a default. This has just been because I've set this up and I've kept it as a standard one. So when you're doing it for new, you want to make sure these are ticked, and then you hit create, and it's going away to do something. There's a cup of tea, right? So we now have a page. Yeah, we have one-page book. Yeah. Now this is actually the first page is always the right-hand side. Yeah. So imagine a book like this. The first page is the right-hand page. Yeah. The cover, ignoring the cover bit, just the first page is always right-hand side, and you can see it's slightly offset here. You can see that this margin, this is the inside margin of the right-hand page. That's 20, and you can see if you've got a ruler on. I've turned my rulers on, so I've got 20 millimeters, 2 centimeters, but margin there. If you look at this one here, you can see that's 15 from the top. It's 20 from the bottom and 15 from the right. Yeah, and this is the frame. And if I click on it, you can see it's a live frame. Yeah, a live frame has got little handles on it. Yeah, and that's where all your words are going to go. So you've got this frame, which is set up within each page. Yeah, this is different to Word. If you're used to Microsoft Word, they would just call them margins. It isn't the margin. This is the page frame, and you can see up here, I've got a frame here, and the frame that's set up with this margin is 93 by 163, and you've got an X and Y coordinates. If you understand coordinates, the top left-hand corner is at 2015. Yeah, 20 along the top, 15 down the side. Yeah. Okay, so these little box is quite useful for telling you where your box is sitting. Yeah. But that's the box on the page. The bleed is this red line outside, which is sometimes used if you're going to put something on that you want to be trimmed and not have a white space around it, because this is where the printer will print to and then trim. Yeah, and this is called the bleed margin, but I've set it up at 3 millimeters, but you can change it at the end. That doesn't matter too much at this stage, but you've got to be conscious that you're dealing with something that's going to a printer. A printer doesn't print it on paper this size. The printer prints it on paper that's bigger and then guillotines it. Yeah, so these are cut to size. Yeah, so they need to know where to cut it, and they don't want to cut through your text or your diagrams. And you might want in some books, this one's badly printed, it's back to front, but you can't really see it. But I've got a box at the top here that where I want the color to go right to the edge of the cut, not have a white margin on it. So I have to put my color over to the bleed margin, that therefore the printer can guillotine it and give me a clean color. So you wanted a whole page to be the one color. You don't want, if you print a page in Word that's background color and you print it on your printer at home, it'll have a white border around it, and you don't want that in a professional book. Okay, I've got an opened window here. You control these windows on the right-hand side through a window here, and it tells you which ones are open. So there's lots of things you can have on the right-hand side that are useful ones, and we'll go through quite a few of them as we go through this evening. I've got pages open at the moment. This is sort of a decent one to have open at the time, because this tells you how many pages, and it gives you a roadmap of where you are. So we're on page 1, and it's telling me that there's a master. This is how you control the all sorts of things like pagination and things that need to repeat on every page. Say you had a running chapter heading, or a running footer note, or a running page number, which is what we're going to use. You put them in the master, and you can have several masters, different masters with different things on it, and they tell you all about the and this tells you that the master I'm using is A. So if I click on this here, I get a double spread. Now that's going to be every page that has A assigned to it will have anything I put on here. So if I put a box here, everything works in InDesign in boxes. Yeah, if I put a frame box here, yeah, and I type something in it, I'll just type some rubbish in it. Yeah. Okay. Now if I go to page 1 now, yeah. Where is it? Oh, it's on the other side. Right. Silly me. Let's put that box on the other side, because it's a left-hand page. And I'll put it on the right-hand page. Put it there. Go to where, there, you can see it's now, so I'm now in page 1, but what I put on the right-hand master is there. And if I create a new page, and another new page, so page 3, yeah, also has whatever I put on there. Yeah, if I went into the left-hand side and put something in here, just put any sort of box. I'm going to do this properly in a minute. Oops. Put it down here. Some stuff in it. Oops, that's gone up there. Let me just put it in that. Okay, that's fine. Let's put it there. And if I go into page 2, where's it gone? I've lost this I've lost this box somewhere. Where's it? That's the box. Let's leave it there. Let's delete that. Right, let's delete this and do a proper page number. Okay, let's just do that because it says use the page number here, and it's well worth doing that. So I'm going to delete these rubbishy pages here, which I don't need. Delete these because we're going to come on to putting that. I just want to get the page numbers in, then we'll put some text in. Yeah. So we're in the master again. I'm going to put a box here. And you can move this box about. If you see these guidelines coming, the greens tell you horizontally and vertically where you are to match things up. And then these purple ones tell you about whether you're in the center of the page or the center of the frame. So it's quite useful to do that. I'm going to put text in here. And I've written in here, insert special character. So it's type, insert special character, markers, current page number. I think I've written that in the thing here. Yeah, and you can see here that A means the current page number. I'm going to center it, and I'm going to check it's usually we usually use, just as a digression, but we usually use 2 types of font in publishing. We tend to use a serif font with serifs on it. If you know what a serif is, serifs are where the font itself has got lots of little tweaks. The letters have got little things on them, like little things on it, whereas not a sans serif font is a straight line stuff, like a road sign. Yeah, so we tend to use Calibri fonts, sans serif fonts for headers and page numbers and headings, and a serif font like Times New Roman or Palatino or Minion for reading. There's a belief, whether it's true or not, that books are easier to read on the eye with a serif font like Times New Roman, but headings are best read with a sans serif font. So like the title page on that is like a road sign. It doesn't have, if you look at any road sign in Britain, you won't see little tweaks and things on it. It's not written in a sort of cursive script. It's written with straight lines. Yeah. So we tend to use both in the book. I tend to use Calibri because it's quite a neat sort of clean font. So I've got a Calibri. I think I said use 12. Yeah. Centered at the bottom. Yeah. So I've got, this is going to give me that. And what I'm going to do is cheat by going edit, copy, edit, paste, and have another one, and I'm going to put that one on the other page, also in the center of the page and lined up with my thing. Yeah. Okay. So if I go to page, if I actually, having done that, I go to page 1 of the actual document, you can see it's got page 1 on it. So that's how we paginate the pages. We have to use this master, and that will paginate the pages, which is why it's nice to have separate documents for the front matter and the back matter, which often aren't paginated. You usually want your book to start the first page of chapter 1 to be page 1, not page 9 or something. Yeah. So, okay, so we've now got a sort of page thing set up. What we're going to do is throw in some text. So I'm just going to minimize this for a second and bring up an author's text. So I have to go into a folder. These are all the Ringwood books. This is all my files of the books we've ever done. And I'm looking for a new book that we're about to do. One of you guys will get this to do as a project. This is a guy called John Keeman, who wrote a book called The Italian Connection. Yes, Italian Connection? Yeah, I think so. And he's written this autobiography called The Shadow of the Crane, and we're about to publish it. So the editor, who happens to be Isabel, has worked with John. I've asked him to produce a Word document, which is much easier to deal with than a PDF, but nevertheless, you may get the document from the editor stroke author in any sort of format. Yeah. So here let's just look at this is the latest version anyway of this document, and it's a Word document. So you're all pretty familiar with these sort of things. Yeah. So authors write their documents in all sorts of weird and wonderful fonts and styles. Yeah. There's already some errors in it. You can see that. But this is how you will be presented with I think it's got a page number, which is way at the top here, and also a page number at the bottom as well. So that, so there's lots of, and they're not told authors what style we want. They just write their books. They're authors, they're creative people. They write a book in the style they feel like that's comfortable to them with the font. And we then have to take that and manipulate it. There's several ways of getting all this text into InDesign. I think mentioned two there. One, you could just hit Control A here and do copy, and which puts it into the clipboard. And when you're back in InDesign, you can go to here. Your cursor's flashing here, and you can hit Edit, Paste. And InDesign is going off to do something. It's circling around, and it's actually auto-flowing the text. This is very clever. If you get this circle thing and this auto-flowing text box, you know something's happening. There we go, nearly done. The problem with this method is it tends to lose a lot of the formatting that the guy put in. Now, it may be that doesn't matter too much, but we can see here that if I go back to the original document, this first introduction here, yeah, he had it in an italic. And often the use of italics is quite important because it's used for emphasis, it's used for quotations, it's used for works, copyright works and that sort of thing, or emphasis. And you don't want to lose it because here we seem to have got a whole document, yeah. But we've lost all the formatting that the guy did, yeah. Which means that you'll never retrieve it again. If he'd gone to the trouble of italicizing various bits and pieces, yeah, you lost it all. It has created a document with 290 pages, yeah. You can see here it's automatically created. If I go down here, I can scroll down here, and I've actually got, yeah, a book, the basis of a book, yeah. So I'm not going to do that because it seems to have lost things. Yeah, so I'm going to do Edit, Undo. It should go back and take it all out. Yeah, so you can always use Undo, get rid of something you didn't like doing. Just the second alternative of sticking the book in is to use File Place. Yeah, can you see I've written that in the book, in the note there? Use File Place, File Place. You tend to think, oh, I'll just import, but it's not import, it's place. And people don't realize that, but it is File Place. I probably have to, I want this, but I probably have to close this Word document as it won't open it if I've got it open. If I'll have to, I'm just jumping around. I have to close the Word document, and I have to open it. Okay, so I've done this, so I've done File Place, and I've picked that Word document. It's spinning away, hopefully going to go auto-flowing in a second. Right, but you can see it's actually, this is improved. It used to be quite clunky, but they seem to have done a lot more integration of InDesign with Word in this new 2020 version, because it takes a lot of all the characters and some of the font styles and replicates it. It didn't used to do it, but then it has problems because it says this guy used a font I've never heard of, or InDesign has never heard of. Yeah, so you get this sort of error message coming up. I tend to skip it rather than try and replace it. We'll fix the missing fonts and the font problems a bit later, because you don't want to start doing all this stuff here at this stage. It's too tweaky at this stage. You just want to get the document in and see what it looks like. So I'm just going to hit skip for them if you get that sort of error message. Now it's doing the autoflow, which is good. So I'm just finishing my tea. It's going cold. Here we go. Nearly, oh, it's halfway through. I'm hoping that this way will preserve some of his formatting. It'll still have his crazy fonts in it. It's got a Courier font, which looks like an old-fashioned typewriter, which in fact that is. Courier is the old replicates an old-fashioned manual typewriter font, but that's not what we want. And his spacing, if we used his font and his spacing, we'd have a 500-page book, which would just look a bit naff. So we're going to change that when we get it set up. Nearly there. Okay, we seem to have got 690 pages this time. So because it's preserved his font, can you see that? I'm just scrolling down here, yeah? So that's the page of a paperback, which you wouldn't want to do that, would you? You wouldn't want to see that in a paperback, and it's also the one on the left-hand side there. You can see the page numbers worked. I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah? And we've got a title page. What we would normally do, that title page, we would normally stick that into the front matter. So we'll probably delete that in a minute, but we'll just leave it there for the moment. Because basically the first task we've got to do is take this text and edit it and change this text to the house style. So the next chapter says house style, and we want to use a thing called paragraph styles. And this is probably one of the most important bits that we need to learn how to use in InDesign is paragraph styles. I'll just check let's open the window. There's a window called styles, paragraph styles. It's a function that's in Word, but we tend to forget about it. There are styles in Word, but we tend not, well, I don't tend to use them very often. You just tend to sort of format it as you go along and mess around with it. The beauty of this is that it does allow you to make constant fonts and constant indents and whatever throughout a document, so you're confident that the whole document does look and feel correct. We also use styles for chapter headings and subheadings, and that's incredibly important for ebooks, because the ebook only paginates at a break in style, usually at the chapter heading. So unless you've got the chapter heading styles in, the ebook won't work properly. It won't paginate properly. Remember, ebooks don't paginate themselves particularly well because it depends on your device. They'll just flow to fill your device screen, whatever font you've wanted. But you do want an ebook to break at a chapter. Yeah, and you have to force it to break at a chapter. And the way EPUB works, it breaks at a paragraph style called, whatever you call it, chapter heading, but you have to define that. So paragraph styles are important if you can, and it's a good practice to get the paragraph styles right in the printed version. That then it makes the EPUB file, which we would create for every book we do as a print book, has an EPUB ebook version. In fact, ebooks sell more than the print books these days, so it's important that the ebooks are correct, and getting the paragraph style right is important. So if I click anywhere in a paragraph here, where's it doing? It's just, have I just frozen? Somehow it seems to have frozen. Why is it frozen? Hmm. Oh. Oh, it's frozen. No, it's just taking its time. It's just slowed up. Where's my mouse? I've lost my mouse. Where is it? Okay, if I click in any paragraph, it will tell me in this paragraph style window on the right-hand side what paragraph style happens to be applied to that paragraph. Anywhere in that paragraph that paragraph style applies to the whole paragraph, not the word or the space or where the cursor's flashing. It's just whatever that paragraph is between paragraph marks is that style, yeah? And we can see its style, it's been inherited from Word, and it's basically Word converting into InDesign has called that style normal, yeah? There aren't any other styles. There's a default called basic paragraph. I've never seen this one, normal web. I don't know what that is. So this is normal. So everything here seems to be normal. But normal, if we double click on normal here, right, it tells you what normal is. And if I go down this whole list of things on the left-hand side, it will tell me that normal, style normal, is a Courier font, which remember is the one I told you was about the typing. We don't want that. We're going to use Times New Roman. I've played with this one, and there's a Times New Roman has a problem on this new 2020. So I'm actually going to use Minion Pro, which is a default Adobe font, which looks very similar. So I've just, you may want to try Minion Pro. It's a default Adobe font. It looks very similar to TNR, but if you can get TNR to work, fine. The last intern that worked on the last book liked Palatino better and was trying to convince me that the Palatino font looked a bit more modern, and it's actually quite an old font anyway. I'm open to suggestions. This was just my original. The thing is, I'm an old fuddy-duddy, and it doesn't really matter to me. It's just that we would like to be fairly consistent, because the book that the previous guy was doing was the sequel to this book, and he wanted to change the font, and I thought, well, okay. But then we talked with the author some more, and we decided that we would stick to the same Times New Roman font so that the book had the same look and feel as the first book. But if you're doing something completely new, it may be that. So I'm open to suggestions. If you guys think that another particular font style is your favorite and it looks really nice, I'm not going to do a book in Comic Sans or something like that, and so any sort of weird font. It has to look fairly professional, and I would like it to be relatively similar to what we've done before. I'll put Minion Pro in for the moment because I might show you the problem I have with TNR later. Regular style. Now, font size. I think I've said 1113. Yeah, so this is, so John's using 11 and it's translated 11 and a half, so I have to go down to 11. Leading is the way that Adobe talks about spacing of the lines. Yeah, so it's completely different setup to Word, where you have a spacing between lines. Here they have a thing called leading, which is basically, I'll put it at 13 and explain why. It means basically that the font is 11, the spacing is 13, which is like a font of 13. So it tells you, so the bigger the leading, the more space there is between the lines. Yeah, 1113 looks about right, and that's what most of these books have done. If you do it too tight, it looks too busy. If you look at bigger than 13, it just looks a bit weird, and also gives too many pages. You don't want our books. This is as fat as you want to get a book. I mean, that's too fat. I mean, I'm not an avid reader. Well, I used to be, but I'm not so much now. Any book that's thicker than about 300, how many pages this book got? 350 pages. Anything fatter than that, I'm just not going to read because it just looks too. So, if you have a big font with big leading, you might get a lot too many pages. It might and it then costs too much to print. So it's always it's a trade-off between readability and size of book. Yeah, and the way we set this normal font style or paragraph style up is important because it will govern the number of pages you might end up generating. I don't need to touch advanced character formats, but indents and spacing is important. And like I've written in here, alignment, we like it to be left justified, and we want the first line indent to be 5 millimeters. That just brings the first line in by 5 millimeters. Somehow this seems to have got a right indent of 1.87 millimeters. That's obviously come from John's document, so I'm going to put that to 0. Some people like to have a space after of a millimeter, and I've written that in there. Maybe a shorter book could. It's about how your eye is drawn to a paragraph. Should there be a space between paragraphs? Some people say if you have an indent at the beginning of a paragraph, you don't need to have a space between them. So you could have 0 first line indent and 1 millimeter after, or a first line indent. It's just that your eye is drawn to the paragraphs breaks. You'll see that in a minute when we put it up. We probably don't need to touch any of these at the moment, but there's a hyphenation one which is useful. We don't like hyphenation. We don't like it at all. Well, I don't anyway, and I encourage people not to do it. So we obviously in the script that came from the author, John Keeman's script, he uses hyphenation. In fact, you can see it there. There's a some people don't mind it. It is a matter of personal preference, but I tend to think it's a bit naff looking in a novel. Okay, I'm not going to touch any of the other ones, though there are lots of other things in here you can play with, but on the paragraph style. But I think we've done enough just to get the thing working at the moment. Yeah. So I've hit OK. And it's going off because it's now editing everything that was normal in the document. Yeah. Okay. It still looks very broken up, that font. What it's doing. Anyway. What I'm going to do then is turn on show hidden characters, because this tells you what's going on in the document. You can use Control plus minus to magnify. Yeah. This font looks really weird. It looks really sort of dodgy. I have a problem here trying to go left and right here because I've got a screen control at the bottom here. I'm just going to just get this off the bottom here. Because I've got a zoom control at the bottom, I can't get the bottom of the bottom scroll bar to move. Going on, oh bloody hell! Sorry about this. Let me try and shift this up a bit. Right, that's better. Right. Well, I'll tell you why it was looking dodgy. It was just my computer was responding slowly. You can see here it's sort of cleaned it up a bit. Yeah, I was wondering why the font was looking so rubbishy. But you can see here, this has actually kept my italics and bold things that John had put in his original document. Yeah. And I'll just try and minimize that. Just go down a bit more, so we can see here. Let's just pull this down a wee bit, just to give you a bit of, yeah. I just want to have this scroll. I want to just be able to use this scroll bar here. Okay. So we go back to the top. We've got a page. There's the front title page. We're going to probably get rid of that in a minute. We've got that, which looks a bit weird, but we'll fix that. And then we've got the main text, which goes down here. Then it's chapter 1. We've got to decide whether this little bit of text here becomes part of the front matter. Probably will do that. We may delete it and paste it into a front matter document, but we'll start down here anyway, and we'll just do some messing around with this just to show you what we need to do. So all of this is normal, as you can see here, and also when you go, if you click on this little button up here and look at this bit here, it tells you what font style you're in. Yeah. What paragraph style you're in. It's normal. That's normal. That's normal. Yeah, so that looks okay. So the problem we've got, all these are indented by 5 millimeters. Yeah, but the problem is that John has typed this with a paragraph break between paragraphs. Yeah, it's got 2 paragraph breaks between paragraphs, which we don't want. He's also seemed to have got some rogue little dots there. Can you see the little blue dot there? That means page break, but we don't want a page break there because that's actually not at the end of it. We only want the page break symbol to be at the end of a chapter, not halfway through a chapter. So this is where the copy editing comes. You just have to go through it page by page, fixing things, yeah? And some things you have to fix manually. So I might just put my cursor there and hit delete, yeah? And you can see that the space is a little blue dots, probably may not be visible on your screens, but anyway, there's a, yeah? And maybe he wants to paragraph there. There should be a paragraph, a single paragraph break there. So I might just hit paragraph, yeah? Okay, so that's how it should look. And you'd obviously have to delete that paragraph marker there, yeah? And then he's got another problem one here, another page break. So we get rid of that, get rid of that, yeah, and get rid of that one, get rid of this one, this one. And you can see here, this is a repetitive error or change that we're doing lots of times, and we could use something in the edit function to put a rule in that say every time you see this, get rid of it, yeah. So what we want to do, what I'm doing is replacing 2 paragraph marks with 1 paragraph mark, yeah. So you can see here, it's looking okay at the moment, but we've still got, there's a double one, there's a double one. Let's see if we can get rid of these with a rule, yeah. So we'll go to edit, find change. Now this is a very useful feature of InDesign. It's find replace in Word. You've probably used it there, yeah? But you can actually use it much more powerfully in InDesign because you can actually use it to get rid of characters, get rid of fonts, all sorts of rules you can use if you get inventive with this to try and change your document. So actually we want to, this little symbol tells you can use a symbol. So if I want to do replace double paragraph markers with a single paragraph marker, I could do that and put it in the document. And I hit find next. Right, it's found it. You can see it there. It's highlighted it, and I just do change. Oh, it did it, right? Fine. Find the next one, hit change. Move it out of the way, find the next one, change. Of course, then you can actually do change all. If you're happy with the rule and you think it's working, you hit change all, and it'll do that. And it'll probably come up with about 6 million, 429 replacements made. Yeah, so I'm going to hit OK and accept that. Yeah. So basically, instead of having to go through every page 420 and do 429 deletes, it's done it manually. Yeah, I mean, it's done it electronically rather than have to do it manually. So find change is an important tool for all sorts of things. If you see a systematic error or systematic change that's needed, you can use find change to deal with it. Close that. So we're getting there. We've now got a book that looks fairly okay. I'm not sure why this not quite lined up with the, I don't know why that is. They're all a bit off. I'll have to check that. Why that's not. Anyway, it's not vital at the moment. Okay, so we've got this down here. Let's just go down to the bottom of the chapter. And you just find odd things. There's a little tab marker caught in there, yeah? So you have to sort of get rid of these little things as you go. Yeah, yeah. Now there's something wrong here. You can see here visually, yeah? There's a paragraph mark there that shouldn't be there. B, this bit of text does seem to be wrong, yeah? There seems to be some sort of font problem here. Yeah, if I look at this here, that's actually Minion Pro 11. This is Minion Pro 12 because he'd obviously mistyped something here. There's a paragraph there that is the wrong font. So I could actually just highlight that or just tick anywhere in that paragraph. Yeah, and what you'll find is it says normal plus, which means it's normal, but it's got some sort of extra bit on it. If I drop down here, you can use alt normal will probably change that. Yeah, it's back to normal. Or you could just change it manually. There's certainly, But copy editing can be a bit of a chore because you really got to run through every page and look. You've done some rules and changed a few things, but at the end of the day, you've got to really go through it line by line. You see all the page numbers are working nicely. It all seems to be laying out all right. One thing that people have picked up on the past that we've not done very consistently, just beginning of the chat. Why would you indent the first paragraph of a chapter? So you want an indent here because this is telling you there's a new paragraph. So you've got choice with new paragraphs. You could get rid of the indent here, yeah, and have a space between paragraphs, like a millimeter space, so your eye is drawn to the jump in the paragraph, or no space between them and just a 5 millimeter start. But you don't. It looks a bit odd there, yeah. So you've got two choices. You either manually fix it by going up to here, yeah, and just dropping that down to 0 like that, or you could create a new style for the first paragraphs. And some people do that by creating a new style in the paragraph style box, yeah, called just create a new style called first normal, and you could create a new style that doesn't have any indent and apply it to every first paragraph of every thingy. Let's just get that over here. Let's just try that. New paragraph style. And I'm going to call it first normal. Based on normal, that's fine. It's going to be Minion Pro 1113. Indents and spacing is going to be 0 because that's the one I've just tried. Yeah, so I put that in here. And this one's going to be first normal. All right, so if I go to chapter 2, down here somewhere, being a chapter 2, where is it here? Yeah, I could put that, and I just click on first normal, and it's changed it. Yeah, and you could use that. So that's the way we do it. What we do need to do here, and we'll just play around with the paragraph styles here, and then we're almost getting there. Yeah, I mean, this is the bit where it's important about chapter headings. Yeah. Now, obviously, there's a page break missing. We've got rid of some page breaks that we didn't need, but we actually do need one here. Yeah. We can get rid of these things here. What we do need is a page break here. So you do type, inserts, break character, insert page break. Okay, so chapter, you can see here, there's the little dot that we do want, the little dot symbol here. And we want chapter 2 here. And we're going to create a new paragraph style called chapter heading. So again, back to here again, new paragraph style. Let's call this chapter heading. And as I said, we want a sans serif font like Calibri, which is what I've recommended. And I want it to be bold. I want it to be 14 leading of, it doesn't matter about leading, but it's got to be bigger than 14, so 18 will do. Indents and spacing, I don't want it indented to the left. And I might want to have a nice space after it of 10 millimeters. I think I probably said that in there. Let's just apply that. So here, chapter 2, I want to be chapter heading. Okay, I failed to do one thing on it. It's over to the left. I want it actually not left justified. I want it center. Okay. Okay, so you can see here now I've got a chapter heading that's a font I want it with a bit of space below it. I'm going to cheat here a little bit because I wanted to put some space in like this. I want to do that, and I want to make that normal. And what I might do with the chapter heading font style, paragraph style, is just put a bit of space above it. Space before, where is it there? Let's put a centimeter in here as well. Right, I quite like the chapter heading to be down a little bit, not right slap bang on the top of the page. Just looks a bit neater that it's there. Now he's a problem here that he's got his little subheading or subtitle or whatever, and he's tabbed it in. Can you see the tab marks there? I hate tab marks. They're just a mess. All these writers just play around with their tabs and they don't think about formatting. So we want to get rid of those things, yeah. We need a separate paragraph style for this one, yeah, as well, because if we don't want it to be chapter heading, which is what it is at the moment, because that will also fool the ebook and think it's another chapter. So we need to have it as a subheading. So we need a new paragraph style for this one, yeah. So we're going to call this one subheading or subtitle or something. Basic character formats. We want this to be also, again, people may play around with these things. I'm going to have it as Calibri, bold italic, and a 12. And I'm going to have it centered, space before, space after. Let's not have a space before. Let's have that as 0, because it's already got space after from the chapter heading. Okay, let's just try that, see what that looks like. And then we apply it to this line here, subheading. So, yeah, I mean, if you might want to change that, but that looks fairly reasonable. I can go back to chapter 1 heading and do this. Of course, you've got to do this for 30 odd chapters or whatever the author has written. This is why it comes, you just have to go through it. Let's just go to chapter 1 and just apply that now, yeah? So what I'm going to do is stick a paragraph mark in here. So that should be normal still. That's normal. This is chapter 1 heading. Now we want to call that chapter. All you do is click on it. Having set it all up, it's actually easy. You just click on the things, yeah? This is a subtitle, a subheading, okay? And this is first normal. So once you've got your paragraph styles set up, it's a bit of a scoosh to go through it then, just go through each chapter. So we'll do one more just to prove my point. We'll play around with the introduction. You can play around with that later, but I just want to do chapter 3. Just find chapter 3. If you don't want to search for it, you could actually use find change and just say find me chapter. Find next. Right, here's chapter 3. So we'll just do this one, then I'll. So here, this is obvious now. We've got to do. We need to insert. It's on type. Insert break character page break. So we need a page break first. Why hasn't it done it? Why has it got it? It's just waiting. It's just waiting its time. Looks weird. It's gone there. We are. Right. So straightforward now. We just go to chapter heading, subheading, first normal. Then you can see if you just your eye is just see there's a font problem here. Yeah. I think that's 14. That's 12, and it should be 11. Yeah, here. So I could just select that, or I could just say hit normal. Yeah. Or just look at it and say. So what font's that? That one's all 12 here. There's a whole load of 12. There's a whole paragraph of 12 there. So again, it's just every book you get will have different sets of problems, yeah. But copy editing is about going through it page by page. What you want to then you just get quirky things like this is. It's worth knowing and looking through a book, the Word document you've got, just to check there's italic. Remember I said about italics, not losing the italics. So I obviously haven't lost them. There are some in here, but you might want to mess with this thing. He's got something here about a song. Yeah, it's also got an error here. You can down here, you can actually see there's an error, and this pink thing is an error. And if I go to this little error message here, it'll tell me there's a text error, there's a missing font, it's in Times Italic is the font that's missing, and there's a character on page 43, which is actually where I'm on page 43, and that's the error. So it's telling me there's somehow that little dot is in a font that the InDesign has never heard of. Yeah. So you could delete that. Yeah, and the error's gone. Yeah, if I probably put spacebar, it might come back. Yes, so you need to sort of get rid of it. Yeah. Anyway, so these are the sort of things you have to play with, and then that looks weird. That font looks weird size. You might want to space that out. You might want to put some breaks in this to sort of put this little song or poem in a different. You might want to put some sort of put something in here before it or something. Yeah. Oops, not that one. Wrong one. First, this book. You might want to do that and then put something afters. Where's afters? Yeah, this one. You see how I've just sort of spaced it out of it? You might want to turn that font from that, which is 14, just down to the normal one. Yeah, somehow get rid of that horrible font in there, but that's another problem. Okay, so that's sort of, in essence, what it's all about. Insert page by into chapter heading, separate paragraph style, subheadings. There's some little notes about using, some authors are very keen on doing something like this, where they go there and they stick in a asterisk, center it like that. Can you see what I mean? That often is used as a sort of a change, it's like almost like a subchapter. It's not a complete chapter, but it's obviously a change in scene, a change in something that's happened, and it's used quite a lot. And you just be aware that some of the authors will have maybe 3 stars or a horizontal line or anything like that. So our standard is a single star in the middle, but you'll find all sorts of things that various authors think looks brilliant, but we're trying to be standardized here. So that's our standard sort of break. If they do have a sub break within a chapter, it's using that. And we have lots of trouble with ellipses. This book is easy because it doesn't have a lot of dialogue. But when you've got a book that's in dialogue, which a lot of vernacular dialogue as well, with lots of sort of dots everywhere, speech trailing off or starting if there's a conversation that's obviously going on, there's lots of dots. Yeah, like this. Yeah. But most authors don't standardize. They just put a few dots in it and then they go on rattling on about the next paragraph and the next bit of dialogue. And some have got 2 dots, some have got 3, some have got 4, some have got spaces before it, some have got spaces after it, and it's a bloody mess. So we tend to standardize it as 3 dots. You can actually put it in as a special character within InDesign as an ellipsis. Those of you who don't know what an ellipsis is, that's what it's called. I'm sure some of you know that. But yes, standardization of ellipses and standardization of punctuation in and around dialogue tends to be the biggest grief we get with a lot of these books, because some people use double quotes, some people use single quotes, paragraph. I mean, punctuation inside, outside quotation marks is a nightmare. Some people get it right, some people get it wrong, some people get it a bit right and a bit wrong, in which case the copy editor has got to try and sort it. And it can be a bit difficult sometimes working out how is that. Should the exclamation mark be inside or outside the quotation marks? Then sometimes you get quotation marks going the wrong way, backwards and forwards ones. Should be the right way around. So this one's quite straightforward because there's no dialogue. This is just an autobiography without any dialogue. Yeah, so this is relatively straightforward. But you can see here we have problems with these fonts. 10, you can see I've got lots of 11s and 12s. So this is going to take a little bit of sorting. But every book does. Every book has got there's something quirky in it, yeah? And you can see here, you've got some paragraph markers here that look wrong. And the only way you're going to fix some of these things is to go through it, yeah? I mean, you just need to sort of fix them. Like there's a paragraph mark in there that's wrong, yeah? And one there. Yeah, so you just need to just go through it. Yeah, look at there's some messy. He's got, and because most authors can't type, or they can type but they can't punctuate, and they use tabs and returns when they shouldn't be. You've got to try and fix them. So there's obviously some problems here, yeah, which I'm not going to fix now, but I would if I was doing this book. Then you've got the standard thing here. You've got to do your chapters. Right, how are we doing? We have an hour. This book's got some pictures in it. I haven't put them in yet, well, obviously because I haven't started it, and I'm not going to do it anyway. One of you guys is going to do this book. And John has produced, it's an autobiography, and most people have got pictures, as he has. A lot of them are pretty poor quality, because this is an autobiography of an old bugger older than me. So he's got some very grainy, old, scanned pictures. I'll just show you some pictures of, here's the book, here's the folder he's just sent me. He's obviously older than me. I was only 4 in 1959. He was obviously older than me. So they usually have pretty poor quality. Hopefully, see, I would reject that because that's just rubbish. You're just not going to put that in a book. Yeah. So we've got some editorial issues with how many photographs can we actually do, and this is where the copy editor and the editor need to get together and have a chat on Zoom about. The author has just given me a folder of about 39 photographs. Well, how many are we actually going to put in? Yeah, and how we do we really want his NHS card and his taxi driver's license picture and his all these things. So they're all downloading. I've got all these on the cloud. That's why they're taking time to download. Some might be useful to the story. Other ones are just padding, and we might not want to do them. I just wanted to show you how to put one into InDesign. That was the point. So let's just if you agree with the author and the editor that a photograph is a necessary part of it, and as I said, some of these books have got. There's Carol's book. Yeah, this book's got. This book we're doing here is probably similar to this one, that it's got odd pictures scattered in the text, like just to illustrate something. And it may be quite a good way of doing that when an author wants lots of pictures to say, well, okay, John, whatever it is, let's have a picture at the end of the chapter in the bit of white space at the end of the chapter, just to fill a bit of white space so it doesn't become dominant. And with pictures everywhere. It's not a newspaper article, it's an autobiography. But other ways we've done it, I think Charlie's Millennium Unrose, I think what I did there was put in the pictures in the way that we used to do it in the old days, which is just put them all on one page or two, just a sort of just a page of photographs with a bit of a caption on them. That might be a way to do it as well. So that it also keeps the printing costs down, because when you send these books to the printer, they say how many pages are black and white and how many pages are in full color. If a page has got a color photograph on it, one page on it, that counts for the whole page. So this book's got 14 or 15, 13 or 14 pictures. So if I scatter through the text, that'd be 13 pages in color. As it is, it's 2. So it's going to be cheaper to print, which is important. So again, this is a sort of the dialogue that goes on, because the editor of the book may not have thought about what the book is actually going to look like. They're more interested in chopping out 300 pages of rubbish and making sure that characters are introduced correctly and that the plot runs properly. They haven't probably necessarily thought about what the book will actually look like. So your job is to sort of work with the editor and the author to say, well, look, what's a good layout of this book? Let's go to the end of a chapter and stick a picture in, and then we can call it a day, because we're getting close to the end here. So I'm going to just do the usual here. Well, it's just this will all be easy to you now. You don't remember all this, so we need to type, break character, page break. We won't bother with the other bit because we've now got a bit of white space here, yeah. So we've got a place to put a picture or two. So this chapter may have a couple of pictures related to it. So probably maximize my screen again now. Don't need to use the scroll bar. So here we are. Rectangle frame tools are the most important thing. Remember, all these boxes around the text are frames, but you can have a frame within a frame. It's not a problem. Yeah. Yeah. And then it's the same thing about file place. Yeah. File place. Yeah. And the pictures, you just need to find the file that you want. So let's, I don't know what he's doing with Bluebird. Anyway, whatever. Okay, doesn't matter. So now, for this, I've written here, you've got to fit it to the frame, and there's two pieces of two commands you need to use. One is fit proportion, then fit frame to content. So you right click on it and it's fitting, fit content proportionately. And then right click again, fit frame to content. I then I think I've written here, put a 0.5 point black border around it. Yeah, so that's that. So it's got a border around it as well. It's often if a photograph has got a lot of white sky in it and against a white background, it just looks a bit naff. So it's good to put a little box around it as well. You can see what that looks like. If I go to view, screen mode, preview, you can actually look at this page. This is what the book looks like now. You actually can see that the book is looking like a book. Yeah. I mean, that's looking like the double spread of a book with a picture in it. Yeah. Now, this picture looks a bit naff with this written. I mean, I'm tempted not to use half of these pictures, but whatever. But you can see that's the way it will look. And there's the front, the sort of 0.5 pixel, 0.5 point border around the picture. Yeah, and you can move that around. Yeah, and you can resize it and do what you like with it. You could put another box if there was if this picture needed a caption, you could put another box, text. Yeah, if I have to put it back on screen mode, normal. Yeah, let's pick up that box. Sometimes you have to tell it to be graphic. Object, content, text. Let's see. Bluebird. Okay, so you can, and if you want to, then it's quite good. It's quite good practice, and I've done it in my geology books. Is to then hit that one, shift, and hit that one, and then object group. The point of that is that it moves together, and in an ebook, that's useful because it means the caption doesn't go flying off in a different place to the picture. You've actually, so when you manipulate these things, you're not losing your caption. So yeah, I've written that, and I've written. I tend to, I know it's a bit sort of textbooky, but I tend to have a style for caption. Yeah, and use a paragraph style for caption, which I like to be, what I've said here, Calibri 10. Yeah, it's different. It's just that the caption is a different font to the text font. That's all. And it's I think that's what I've done on Charlie's book and the geology book as well. I think the font, yeah, yes, definitely the captions are different to the text, so your eye doesn't get distracted by it thinking it's part of the text. Yeah. That's pretty much it. And then I've said at the bottom, the edit find change feature is very useful. You saw how useful it was to try and get rid of persistent errors that could be turned into a rule. Yeah. But even in an hour, we've turned what was an unpresentable Word document into a book that you could actually sit down and think you could read that. Yeah. So that's the sort of job. 90% of it is pretty boring, but I quite like, if you're a creative sort of person and you like to make something, yeah, then this is making something. This is taking someone's someone's life's work that they may have sweated years over and turning it into something they want to see. Most people, as they say, a lot of people have got one book in them. And if this is their book, they want it to look good. And that's our job. And that's your job, is to look with your sharp eye and say, ooh, look, there's a font that's wrong. Ooh, look, there's 2 dots instead of 1 dot. Yeah, so we can use, if there's 2 dots here, we can use a rule to get rid of it, because we can actually we can replace 2 dots with 1 dot. Yeah, 1 space bar with 1 space bar to replace 2s. There's a font that's wrong. So your eye has to be quite sharp to sort of pick these things up, yeah, because you're the people, the copy editor is the person that's picking it up. The author might not pick it up, and certainly the editor might not either. But it's your job to pick up all this stuff and turn this guy's life's work into something that he'd love to sell and sit on his bookcase. Right, I'm going to turn your mic. You can unmute. Anyone that wants to ask me a question can unmute yourself and talk. If you want to talk amongst yourselves, yeah. If there's anyone to chat another 10 minutes or something, yeah. And then I'm going to go and get a whiskey because my throat's sore from talking. So it's over to you guys if you got any questions.
I just quick one. Thank you for that. That was great. I was going to say for everyone, I don't think everyone's going to be doing books. I think some people we might be getting you to do like AI sheets on InDesign. Mm-hmm. Just that's like, I don't know if John Reed, I know he did a template for AI sheets now, but I don't know if we have one on the Ringwoods.
I did, yeah. AI sheets. When I first did it, some of the interns did AI sheets, which is, I mean, AI sheet is a single page in InDesign, and it's no different really. If you're just doing it a single page, it is no different to PowerPoint or something. You're just playing around with those boxes, importing an image, writing text in a box, moving those frames. Yeah, you're just playing around with one page. You create a document, and it's just like playing around with a PowerPoint slide. You know, it's nothing particularly difficult. You just play. You don't need paragraph styles. You don't need to do all of that sort of flowing of text, all that sort of stuff. You know, you just need to just use those boxes and size them. Maybe, as you say, place the picture. You may need to get the cover picture. You may need to do file place, and then that sort of manipulation I did with the image about fitting the frame and fitting it proportionally to make the image fit in the box and resize the box. And it's about playing around with boxes and sizing it, and playing with fonts and colors and that sort of thing. So I don't know what the latest AI sort of guidance is. I don't get involved in it anymore, because if you can do this, you can do AIs. AIs is relatively straightforward. Yeah, there's not. This is the tricky one, is actually making a book. What I did mean to show you was I'm just going to just minimize this, go a little bit smaller. And I wanted to one thing I did mean to show you was view extras, show text threads. Yeah, I wanted to show you, you should always make sure that when that document has flowed, that you can, this tells you how the flow is working. Yeah. What you don't want to do is take that bit, yeah, and move it over here to another place, yeah, because you'll get spaghetti. Yeah. And this has happened. Some of the interns have messed around because they think the editor wants that page moved or something, or that paragraph. They've done that and wondered why the bloody document doesn't work anymore. Yeah. So it's just a tip. I didn't put it in there, but you might want to, if you're going to do some copy editing, you want to turn this thing on. It's called View. It's hard to find it. It took me a long time to find it. It's in View Extras text threads. They're called text threads, and they show you how each text box. So if you flowed it in, auto-flowed it or flowed a document in, you will see this. You'll also see if you've got a problem in a text with the text flowing, you'll see a little red cross in the bottom here, and an error message will come at the bottom. These are the things that you'll come across. I can't explain everything right now. If you guys have got a project and you're assigned a book to do, and there are, I think, George, 4 or 5 books in the pipeline. I'm not
Yeah, I
sure.
think we're still editing stuff now, but I think there will be a few coming out that will be.
I think there are 4 or 5 that I've been given that I know of. So it looks like I may be dealing with some of you. What you do is once you've got your project and you've got it, and you then just email me and say, I'm stuck. Can we have and I can do a Zoom chat. I mean, we used to do it face to face over a computer, but we can use Zoom, so you don't have to travel anywhere, and you can just throw your screen up and say, look, I'm having a problem with this. Or you could just say, look, what do you think of what I've done? Is this all right? So I'm happy to sort of have sort of one-to-one dialogue and sort of follow up once you're actually doing something. Yeah. And this was just to give you an hour or so sort of overview of and I say some people might not ever want to go near it. It's not everyone's cup of tea, copy editing, but I quite like it. But then I'm that sort of OCD person, I guess.
Yeah, no, I just want to bring up because I think that's something where I'm going to try and give out to people to get maybe a bit of hang with InDesign, because as you said, anything you've kind of learned here, you can take over doing AI stuff, and I'll send out templates for that. But that'd be like maybe a good starter, and then also the copy editing will be the big jobs for most people.
I mean, as you said, the AIs are sort of a good starter, and I say if you can, I mean, it isn't once you've got the hang of the basics of some of the InDesign, it is just like creating a big PowerPoint slide of lots of text boxes and color boxes, but some of those commands are the same. You know, playing around, making sure that the cover image goes in nicely and it doesn't get clipped off and it fits in, and then the text is the right fonts and just looks good. You know.
Yeah, I'll leave it to anyone else if anyone else has any questions before we wrap up.
So is this like a print version, or is this like a Kindle version, for example, or would the Kindle version be completely different?
Okay, so what happens is what we would do is that you create a version. I create this one. Say I'd finished this book now, yeah? Say I'd finished all this, I would then, I would export it to PDF, yeah, export, yeah, and it would save as type PDF. It could be an interactive PDF, or it could be an EPUB. Yeah. Now, if you export this one as I have done it to EPUB, it'll be a bit of a mess, right? Because we have got certain things we've not fixed yet. Right, but the basic command, what I tend to do is create a whole set of documents and a book. I haven't showed you how the book, but I'll do that. We're going on too long now, but yeah, you create your book with your documents and create the PDF file. I then take a copy of all those documents and add the sort of suffix EPUB to them and create a whole new set of documents and a book for the EPUB, because you're going to start messing around with you might start messing around with things like paragraph markers and paragraph styles that you manage to get it okay. It's relatively straightforward to mess with these things in all sorts of different ways to get a PDF that looks okay. But when you find it goes into an EPUB, you cannot get away with things that you could have got away with in the PDF. So you can always try, when you've done it, you could try running an EPUB and then run it into an EPUB reader. Microsoft Edge used to have a read. They've stopped doing it. It used to be a good tester, but there's Adobe Digital Edition. There's another. You may have something on your phone. You could just take it. I've got a thing called Lithium Reader, which is a good test reader. Just import it onto my phone, which gives me a good sort of test whether the EPUB has worked or not. The key thing on EPUBs that isn't here on these is a table of contents, because you need a table of contents. So if any of you are going to get into ebooks and you won't do an ebook until you've done this, because the ebook is stage 2. Yeah, it's the master's degree, not the undergraduate degree. So you've got to do this first. Yeah, then you can try an EPUB, because the trick is getting a good table of contents in it. And it might need an index or a glossary or other sort of fancy navigation features to get you around. Table of contents is fairly tricky, can be straightforward. And again, if you've got your paragraph styles sorted, the EPUB will work and the table of contents will work. If you've made a mess of your paragraph styles, like if you've got that one as a paragraph style called chapter heading, and that one's still chapter heading, the table of contents won't work, and EPUB won't work because it doesn't know what it's doing, which is the chapter heading. You know, so you've got to make sure that you do all these things right in the PDF version. Then your EPUB and your table of contents will work. But yeah, as I say, we've only just touched on some of the features of InDesign. There are, I mean, I said in the geology book, there's a table of contents in this, a printed version table of. We only do tables of contents in print books if they're non-fiction. So I mean, you won't be able to see this from there, but that's got a sort of standard textbook navigation printed table of contents. But every ebook has a navigation that you could run down with your finger and get to chapter 6. And all sorts of bookmark features and things like that in it. So that's another, you know, if several of you want to do EPUBs, then we could have a separate training session, but I would expect you to have got this far with the book first before you get into the EPUB. Yeah. But every book, if you do the copy editing of a print book, you will almost certainly, and you've managed to do it and you're happy with it and you want to carry on, we'll do the EPUB. And I'll also want to get some of these EPUBs. Not every EPUB we do to date has had to be sold through Kindle, Amazon Kindle, yeah, and bought through Amazon. But there are ways, things. There's a company called Glassbox do it so that you can actually get DRM, the digital rights management, embedded, encrypted into the file, and sell it on your own website as an ebook. At the moment we can't, because if you stuck an EPUB on the website and people downloaded it, there's no protection. Anyone could read it. You could pass it to all your pals. It's just like an unrestricted file. But that's why Amazon have got their mitts on it. They have, you know, it's DRM protected on Amazon. But the Glassbox do that as well now. So we can. So if any of you interested in websites, want to start playing around with code in websites and embedding snippets of code from Glassbox, I'm delighted if someone took that on, because it is a little project that someone might really want to do as a sort of portfolio test thing. So if I know, I don't know if I've never met you, George, but I think you do know that I was thinking about this, yeah?
Yeah, I know you were saying about it, yeah.
So I'm looking at if someone wants the task of playing around with websites and embedding ebooks into the website and integrating Glassbox with the WooCommerce eShop on the website, then you know, if someone wants to do that, great, because I'd rather one of you guys did it than me, yeah. Because it's something you can learn. I mean, I could do it, but I don't want to. I got a life to lead. You guys might want to do it as a sort of career step and say, this is what I did. I can do this sort of thing, because it might be very good in a job interview that if you knew how to play around with e-shops and ebooks and stuff.
Yeah, no, because if you ever want to work in production, knowing how to do ebooks and DRM stuff is always invaluable.
Yeah, so I think, and we've never done an Audible either, so that's another area of sort of development. So, you know, but this is the basics. You've got to get this right first, as your book just looks shit, you know. I mean, the printed books are still the start of all these things. You still need the printed book. It's still these authors want to wave their book about and say, I made this book, I wrote this book, that's my life, you know. Then we can then you can have an ebook as well. But any other questions? I know I've rattled on for long enough. Yeah.
See the cover and the spine and everything, are they put into the same InDesign file, or are they done separately and sent to?
Yeah, okay, good question about the covers. Yeah, what we tend to do is that the covers are done by cover designer, whoever does the cover, and it's usually sent to the printer as a separate PDF.
Okay.
So we don't put the bit I'm talking about here, the copy editor, you are not concerned with the cover. Someone else is dealing with the cover, you know, project manager, editor, whatever is dealing with the cover. And when you go to, because I say I put all these books are on Amazon, and when you go to Amazon, KDP, it's called Kindle Direct Publishing feature in Amazon, they want the text, the EPUB file, not to have an image, and the image has to be separate, and it has to be 1,000 pixels on the longest side, and all sorts of, it's like Goldilocks. It can't be too big and it can't be too small. and the cover image has to be separate. I suspect when we get into glass box and other things that you can have the covers integrated in it. You won't be able to see this on my phone, but I've got lithium reader on my phone here, and I've got EPUB versions of the Ringwood EPUBs with a cover integrated into the thing as the first page. Just put it on, which means that my lithium reader has got covers on them, so I can actually look. I can touch my own book, yeah, and I've got my book on the screen here, touching the picture. And Glassbox does that too, so that you get the Glassbox reader app, and all the pictures are on a little Latin matrix, and you can just touch your book with the picture. And you would do that here. You just create a new page 1, yeah, with the frame there, and you'd stick in the cover into a frame, just the way I've been doing that picture the bluebird I put in. You just put the cover picture in as on the first page, but not for Amazon. You have to take it out for Amazon. So, yeah. And the printer, as you say, for the physical book, the printer usually wants it as a separate file, because they're going to set it up, because they're going to usually put, your book will start there on page 1 with the title page, but the cover has got a blank back to it. Yeah, so the cover is printed separately with its spine and then glued on. So it's a separate. It might be 3 PDFs for the spine, the front, and the back cover, sent separately by the project manager or whatever, editor or whatever, and the copy editor is just dealing with the first title page to the very last page of a Ringwood catalogue at the very end of the book. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Unless anyone else has any last minute questions before we wrap up, I think that'd be a good place to do it. And also, don't worry if you forget any of this, because there will be a recording going afterwards, because I wouldn't expect anyone to take this fully in, because that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
But
it is, and it only starts to make sense if you've got those notes there and you actually start to do it. And as I say, do get through either through George or back to me when you've sort of had a struggle with it, and then just like, well, what do I do? What happens next? Why doesn't that work? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So unless anyone's got anything to ask, I think we're good to go. I think hour 40 minutes. I think we're doing pretty well. So, brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you very much, David. Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
See you sometime in person somewhere, wherever.
When this is all done.
Okay, right.
Nice to see you all again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.